I'm Christopher Lydon, and this is Open Source, rediscovering John Updike in the afterlife of a great writer. The selected letters of John Updike, just published, come to 800 pages of unguarded messages to his wives and lovers, to his mother and his editors. We're turning to his kids for a fresh measure of the artist who cracked open the sexual revolution of the 1960s and lived it his own way. Couples was his breakthrough novel and bestseller in 1968. His second son, Michael, and his second daughter, Miranda, were adolescent witnesses to the story. We're gathered in Michael's house on the North Shore of Boston, the heart of Updike Country, to resurface the glow in John Updike's prose and the pleasure in his company. Miranda and Michael Updike, so happy to be reading these letters with you and hearing your sort of privileged reading. I'm besotted with these letters, but I want to say what really draws me is the man inside them, the writer, the dad. Start with a general view of the man you're meeting here. Is this your dad? Is he like your dad? Does he measure up to your dad?
It actually shows more about him than I really understood. Contrary to sort of public opinion, he was not discussing his novels or his writing or his religion with his children very often. I mean, he discussed it with my mother, and later, Martha, my stepmother, was sort of a first reader for him. The early letters particularly, the ones where he finally gets into the New Yorker, gets a couple poems accepted, then a short story, and is back and forth to Catherine White, I think are just magnificent definitions of his maturity, his eloquence, and his seriousness as a writer.
There's so much I learn about John Updike here that I didn't know, and I'd love to read a few favorites. One is a difficult one. It's a letter to your sister Elizabeth in 2007. This is toward the end of his life, and he's writing, "It has been on my mind that I have been neglectful of you and your family." And he says, "In truth, I always had an agenda in which family life was only one item. In retrospect, your mother was given the uncontested role of lead parent, and a lot of my favorite family moments are mixed up with others." But he says, "My own experience of family life as a boy fitted me for the role of child, and a child I have remained, trying to shut out adult conversation as I lie crayoning on the carpet." Did any of you kids or all of you kids feel neglected by your dad?
Well, they got divorced. And so that was, I think, very common, not unique to us, sort of a jealousy of the stepchildren were younger and going on better vacations, getting polo lessons at Myopia at that point because of success followed by wealth. But he was also very conscious of time, and he would come play golf with us once every 2 weeks or so, followed up by tea. But he's always thinking about what he's going to read, what he's going to write, etc. So we kind of had two things to compete with: the writing and our stepmother and the children.
Were you neglected, Miranda?
No, not particularly, in the sense that our whole neighborhood was filled with parents who were had a whole gaggle of children, and we all ran around the neighborhood. The parents of that generation just tended to let their kids sort of roam. So I would say I think he was a pretty good father, really. Not really neglectful, at least on the early side. As we matured, I would say, when they got separated, of course, things changed a bit, quite a bit, yeah. He could he probably could have spent a little more time with us, but he was, he had another family to deal with, too.
Was that hard?
Sure. Yeah, it was hard.
It was hard. I hate to be talking about the dead this way, but, our stepmother made it her mission to protect John from outside sources. And she kind of included us as outside sources as well. So we'd get a wonderful invitation for tea on Christmas, where we'd go and open presents and have tea. But it was well known we needed to leave by 6 because they had to go with Martha and Martha's children to a Myopia dinner that Christmas night. The two were never really blended as a family, or even, theatrically blended in a way.
Here's an easy one. I think it's my favorite letter in the book. It's to a young boy named Christopher O'Donnell, 9 years old. Through his father, not a close friend, he's learned that Christopher O'Donnell has psoriasis, and Updike, of course, famously suffered from it. Here's the note he wrote to Christopher O'Donnell. Dear Christopher O'Donnell, I know that psoriasis can be annoying and embarrassing, but there are many more treatments now than when I was 9 years old, and more to come. In 10 years, perhaps, an easy cure will be developed. But for now, submit to what cures there are, including moderate sunshine, and be grateful that it doesn't hurt, and that people with psoriasis are generally pretty healthy otherwise. In Latin, it is called morbus fortiorum, the disease of the strong. Be strong, and have happy holidays. Sincerely yours, John Updike. There's a reckless kindness in that I just love.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Being a psoriasis person, I would have appreciated a letter like that myself.
But I'm also struck, another word, stoical or stoic, facing death. The last letters, when he knows he's got very serious cancer, and terminal cancer probably, are very, very touching. And he faced it. Here's a note to David Remnick, New Yorker editor, who had commissioned a review of a John Cheever biography, I guess.
Yeah, Blake Bailey's book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And your dad says, as to me, the Cheever review may be my last, but who knows for sure. The journey, as they say, with lung cancer is pretty much one way, but with some loops in it, maybe, and remissions under chemo. As with life itself in its broad outlines, there is only submitting to it and trying to be grateful for what, as much in my life does, warrants gratitude. With great respect and affection, John.
Yeah, those were brave letters that he wrote. And I know for a fact he announced to his entire poker group, this is my last time because I have cancer, and sort of sent a chill through them. And it's beautiful in a macabre kind of way, the poetry that he wrote when he knew he was dying. He was diagnosed, he's still in Mass General Hospital, and I'd visited him, and he's writing poems from the hospital bed. And I love, there's a great imagery of the morphine he's getting, like a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood, going into this wonderful cul-de-sac and around.
The word is bravery. He faced it.
Yes, he certainly did towards the end.
Yeah, it was very short diagnosis to the grave, sort of 2 months or something like that. And his final words to Martha as they headed to the hospice, he said, "Are you ready for the leap?"
And she pondered that quite a bit. She occasionally would say, I don't know exactly what he meant by that. What do you think he meant by that? And I wasn't sure. I think it probably had something to do with faith.
I want to read one about the ecstatic lovingness of John Updike. This is a letter to Mary just after they've graduated from Harvard. They must have declared their engagement or something. They've crossed some sort of Rubicon together. And he writes, this is 1952. He's writing from home, Plowville, Pennsylvania. Mary, my love, my Mary, this is going to be a personal letter, a letter to be read to no one. In it, I am unashamed and explicit, for I am thrilled and surge with strength and a sense of direction. I love you. I shall have you. You are mine. Never did I dream that my furtive little trip would bring such rich fruits and create a psychological restoration I felt impossible. All is so good. I have so much to say and apologize for. And I'm so tired in a purely delightful physical way. I had no sleep last night and had to go straight from the train to work. That little will be said, but you must know that at last all is right with me and shall be with us.
I love that. I love that whole letter. He has this revelation that his wife will support him while he's starting off his writing career. I guess he takes a trip into Cambridge from Pennsylvania and meets my mother and her best friend, Anne Karnofsky. And there, they kind of come to this realization that, well, Mary can work. Mary can work. She's a young, healthy person. She can work and you can write. And suddenly there's this sort of epiphany. And so this letter ends, I'm sorry, baby. This is a very strange letter and should be burned after reading for fear of embarrassing the hell out of me. But tonight I came face to face with the reality of us and the real goodness of us and the grandeur of our love working for both of us. The visit, the wonderful visit, did it. We'll write poem for the newlyweds tomorrow. Now, I must off to my lonely bed. Need I say, I love you. Oh, I do, I do.
That's a happy man.
Mm-hmm. One of the reviews said it is kind of sad because you understand 15, 20 years later, the divorce happens and there's some really brutal writing in that. Miranda and I were too young. Liz and David went off to boarding school and college. And he'd come sort of babysit for us, even though we were sort of too old to be babysat. And he'd type on like ripped up letters and talk about the dog feeding and the dog behavior and what we had done. And then it would be sort of down to nut tacks. We're not getting back together. We're really separating. I'm going with Martha and this and that. And those are frank, but brutal.
Yeah. For him, for you, for...
I think for everybody. My mother, before she died, had separated these letters and put a manila folder which said "to personal for Shift," meaning Jim Shift, the editor. And we did not want to start editing the letters. And we just said, let's give it all to Jim and see what he decides. So some made it in there, and they're not showing him in the best light. Mm-hmm.
I want to read, it's not a letter and it's not in the book, but to me, it's one of the real distillations of your dad, philosophically and just personally in every way. I found it from Steve Pinker, the psychologist, famous guy, and a great fan of Updike. He talks about schools of psychology and behavioral psychology, at which he felt John Updike had written the perfect description of what it's up to and what Updike himself thought he was up to. Here's John Updike writing. A writer of fiction, a professional liar, is paradoxically obsessed with what is true. And the unit of truth, at least for a fiction writer, is the human animal, belonging to the species Homo sapiens, unchanged for at least 100,000 years. To be human is to be in the tense condition of a death-foreseeing, consciously libidinous animal. Once again, the death-foreseeing, consciously libidinous animal. No other earthly creature suffers such a capacity for thought, such a complexity of envisioned but frustrated possibilities, such a troubling ability to question the tribal and biological imperatives. So conflicted and ingenious a creature makes an endlessly interesting focus for the meditations of fiction. Pinker's comment was simply brilliant. But I hear John Updike defining the aim of his art, a very high art indeed, but to look not coldly, but sympathetically at this somewhat helpless species.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is declaring his vocation right in there. That's my job.
I think so. And throughout the book, the collection, there's all these sort of religious references. When he gets grief for being too sexually explicit or something, he said, nothing is there that's going to make God blush. He created this all.
That's a profound, not just Christian, but deeply Christian insight. There are gang workers in Los Angeles whose slogan is working with troubled kids, people in trouble. You are precisely the person that God had in mind when he made you. Everything's a version. Let's speak about that art.
I don't know that much about his attitude on religion. We had a kind of a religious background. We all had the Sunday dinner after church, but he didn't philosophize about religion with his children. We were left to figure these things out on our own, if we so chose.
Yeah, I was always, I can't say embarrassed, but I had a hard time as an atheist looking at his religious belief. He would come through rational mind so close to it being non-existing, but he just said, there's something that won't let me stop believing. And whether it was comfort from the fear of death or just the heavy Lutheran upbringing he had, that it was ingrained and he couldn't let it go.
I think he'd thought hard about it, and he wrote somewhere, creation and consciousness were his two sort of reasons for thinking, yeah, there is some other way of looking at things, and definitely not to rule it out. Can I say also there's humor in these letters? He's writing to Joyce Carol Oates at some point. And he says, Martha and I are trying to enjoy our summer up here on the hill as the days draw in and the long winters loom. My golf is deteriorating, and the heroes of all my short stories seem to be old men obsessed with death. I made a good effort at The Golden Bowl, famous late Henry James novel, but in marking time around page 260, isn't James really, when all is said and done, insufferable?
I'll read a funnier one. This is while they're spending a year in Oxford after he's graduated from Harvard. He starts to get published in the New Yorker, and there's this back and forth across the Atlantic between Catherine White, him, and the poetry editor, and he's introduced to William Maxwell. And the whole time he's there, he's producing beautiful oil paintings.
His credit line always included the fact that he had spent a year after Harvard at the Ruskin School of Art in Oxford.
Yeah. I'm going to read a passage from Catherine White, who they have a very fresh relationship. He's very excited to be getting things published.
Catherine White as in E.B. White.
E.B. White's wife, who was his first editor at the New Yorker, poetry editor. And I think Maxwell became his fiction editor. She asked him if he has this grammar dictionary book written by a man called Fowler. Yes, I do own a copy of Fowler. But along with my parents, pet cat, rubber basketball, and other steadying influences, I left it in America. Colons tend to be a weakness with me ever since I took a course in the works of George Bernard Shaw. They look so pert and snappy. Somehow I always think of a semicolon as dragging one foot. I fear in poetry I use punctuation improperly to indicate the degree of stop I want. Thank you for correcting me. And it's just sort of like pushing her back and then acquiescing and saying, all through humor and absurdity in a way.
I wanted to make a little comment about the Plowville letters that he wrote, especially when he was in college. They were interesting to me because, he's writing to his parents, mainly his mother.
Michael, can you read one of those Plowville letters home?
This is March 10th, 1953. So I think that would have been his junior year. Artistically, I have not found my voice yet. But the longer I dabble around, the more the conviction grows that I shall someday. The fact generally assumes by everyone, even me, that I am not a mental superman a la Blake, seems to indicate that there is no danger of my eking out existence in a garret, Mary scrubbing floors meanwhile, to create unread masterpieces. If all I have is talent, industry, and intelligence, I should be able to write to please enough people to make money at it. The drama might be my melior, or do I just think so because I have come latest to it, and at any rate a good many people insist that I can draw, so I have something. If I can translate the immediacy and charm of my best drawings into words, I should please someone, preferably someone with money. And it goes on, but he's sort of like convincing himself that he is going to make it someday.
Can I make another on Ted Williams?
Please do.
What can we say about the Ted Williams piece, Hub Fans Bid Kid Adieu, which was the newspaper headline that he used as the title of that incredible piece? It's just the greatest sports reporting ever done by anybody, anywhere. He said of Ted Williams, he radiated from afar the hard blue glow of high purpose. And of course, he's describing himself in a way. To me, John Updike has always been the Ted Williams of our prose. But Ted Williams brings out something absolutely undiluted and passionate in your dad.
I love that essay. It's really magnificent. And he talks about, first, why he's a Red Sox fan, because it kind of became his team. He should have been a Phillies or a New York Yankees fan, but he chose Boston as a young child. And then how Ted Williams was sort of always coming back from injury, coming back from the war, doing this and that, and just kind of builds the whole thing to a crescendo describing the people and the fans, the everyday people, and the 3 or 4 at-bats where he grounds out or strikes out and then magnificently gets a home run in his last at-bat. And the line I remember is, the ball was something like a construct, something like the Tappan Zee Bridge that brought it over the wall.
He wrote, "It was in the books, the home run, while it was still in the sky. Brandt ran back to the deepest corner of the outfield grass. The ball descended beyond his reach and struck in the crotch where the bullpen met the wall, bounced chunkily, and vanished like a feather caught in a vortex." And then the famous refusal to come out and take a further bow after he got home.
Gods don't return letters or something.
Gods do not answer letters. Yeah. And then, so touching in all of this, that he didn't go with the team to New York to play the last game of the season. His own man to the end, Williams had decided not to accompany the team to New York. He had met the little death that awaits athletes. He had quit.
It's nice.
So what was it like to live in a house with that man and his 4 rooms and 4 typewriters for 4 different media that he worked? Poetry, novels, stories, criticism.
Well, of course, for a long time, we didn't really know what our father did, in the beginning. He had a home office, and he also had an office in downtown Ipswich, above the Dolphin restaurant. And he was very open about us coming to visit him, either in his home office or downtown. He had a fun, flowing writing style that included his noisy children running up and down the stairs. We had a room called the playroom, and in the playroom were lots of art materials, wire, clay, paints, crayons, etc. And we were encouraged to use our artistic tools and create things.
Michael?
He was always reading something, correcting proofs. Typewriter was always there. I mean, the maddest I've kind of seen him was when we were plucking away at the typewriter without paper in it. He said, "You never type without the paper in there. It ruins the carriage or the roll." He didn't talk much about what he was doing. It was kind of his world. And then, and we found out he was a writer and known by schoolmates. Is your dad famous? Are you rich? You kind of figured that out that way. But it really was sort of a couple scene growing up. The sweet spot was the 60s for us. I was born in 59. And we'd be taken to the volleyball games with other parents. It's like sort of 12 couples and all their kids. And so, and not that we weren't allowed to get other friends, but that there was just no time because every February vacation, we're all going skiing together every Sunday. And they played football in the fall, basketball sort of in the winter and spring. There's golfing, there's tennis, being dragged around to tennis.
Canoe trips. And, I'm friends with some of these children, some I'm not anymore, but we have a reunion every 4 or 5 years, and it's titled Children of Benign Neglect. And it's embarrassing, too. I mean, I look at them and I know my father had an affair with them, and they know mother had an affair with my father, and so it's really,
it's fascinating. Looking back, you could almost make a case that he invented the sexual revolution in the famous novel that made him a rich man, Couples. How do you look back on that whole scene?
We were kind of clueless. I mean, we were children looking up, trying to sneak peanuts when they're all having cocktails, things like that. And then as we got into our teens, it became more evident what was going on. And the couples of the group started one by one getting divorces. And I think out of the 12, there's 3 that made a full marriage till death did them part.
I would add that our parents were very good about, I'm sure they fought a certain amount, but they didn't expose that anger in our presence.
Anger.
Whatever kind of, jealousy, affair, there's going to be turmoil there within a marriage. They were very good about sheltering us, I guess, from whatever their private lives were about.
This was when suburban sex became famous, and scandalous, and then a cliche. When did you tune in on what's going on?
We kind of had two big trips. One was to go to Nice, France, and that was to get away from my father's first affair, which was a woman named Joyce Harrington.
She's in the book in a big way.
She's mentioned a lot. There's no letters to her. I asked her son, any letters when you got rid of her things? And nope. So we don't know if they were destroyed or he just wasn't going to hand them over. And then going to London for a year was a way of getting out of town right when Couples came out. So we had a wonderful year being in the American School of London, and we were over there, and my father tried to make up for writing such a sexy book, and he thought he'd do a scholarly James Buchanan play.
Really?
My brother David described it as like, yeah, he would drop us off at a friend's house and kind of hang around and talk to the mother for a while, waiting for, I don't know what, an opportunity or something. But there was sort of a period in the 60s where it was 3 or 4 different women, all ending with my stepmother, Martha, was sort of the last one. And I also want to say my mother, God rest her soul, was not an innocent victim in this. She was the first one to step out of the marriage, and she had a lot of business going on with the other men as well. So it was really a mutual kind of thing. And my mother remained friends with some of the women that my father had a thing with. And my father played golf with his good friend Wick Potter, Dr. Potter. And Dr. Potter had at least a 5-year relationship with my mother, secret one.
It's a funny thing about Couples, hugely best-selling novel. I thought of it at the time. I didn't read it, but I thought, oh, well, he's really hit the jackpot with a racy novel about adultery in the suburbs. Nowadays, I think he might have sensed with his incredible ear and eye that something profound was changing in American culture. And he wanted to study it. He wanted to take part in it, maybe enjoy the games in it, but that there was an intuition here about something big in the post-war American world that he had to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a way, they're coming of age in the 50s, and then there's the 60s, which they're all a little too old for. They're in their early 30s, and they're sort of decide, wait a minute, we got married and started having kids early on. Now I'm 29, and they start to be dating like they're in college again, in a way.
Did it bother you to read the letters about it?
I can say I haven't gotten that far yet, but I have been advised by my brother Michael that I can skip over certain letters if I want.
Some people think they didn't belong in print.
Well, there was a controversy because my stepmother did not think they should be. She thought, oh, John is so smart, he can do a letter just talking to colleagues and editors and all that. Where James Schiff thought it would be dishonest to exclude the love letters in a way. And John Updike, who's known for his sexy writing, and to say he never wrote letters that were sexy. That said, he had a hard time getting the letters. I mean, Martha offered them all up. My mother's were pretty available to him. And this Joanna Brown, I had no idea she was at Harvard when he was there, and they admired her. And he was seeing her.
There was also a contract, if I'm not mistaken, with your mother that they would never say or write or do anything that would put the other in a bad light.
Yeah, it was a 5-year contract where she could read everything and veto it. And there's another woman in the book named Joan Cuddy, and she's the model for one of the Witches of Eastwick. But she originally said, I have no letters at all from John, and I don't want to even talk about it. The book was delayed, and she changed her mind, and she wanted her letters in there. And so they sort of stopped the presses a little bit and worked them in. So there's 4 sets of love letters. My mother's is mostly PG-13 because they're college, but there's some stuff going on. And Martha's and Joan Cuddy's are hardcore graphic. So here's one to Joan Cuddy, and it's June 7th, 1967. I was friends with Peter and Stephen Cuddy, and I knew the father well, David Cuddy, who took us out in his boat often. How strange and sweet and yet disquieting it is to have Stephen and Peter, half you, half David, in my backyard every night. Dear children they are. Maybe it is their becoming realer to me that has tipped me into disquiet. Our alternatives, breaking it off and marriage, seem impossible and not even obliquely desired by you. So maybe I am rebelling at night and a bit now on the day. Do you find more edge in me than you used to, against being so settled? There is in me, mixed with a lot of tameness and even conservatism, a defiant something that hates to do the expected. My books are all written in a kind of anger. And so I think he's trying to get out. Yeah, he's trying to get out of the relationship in a way, which was easier said than done.
No, it brings me back, though, to his sort of philosophical locating himself. The fiction writer is a sort of professional liar, but he's trying to account for the human, the tense condition of a death-foreseeing, consciously libidinous animal, suffering a capacity for thought and a complexity of envisioned but frustrated possibilities, such a troubling ability to question the tribal and biological imperatives. Fancy way of saying, what an amazing mystery. Sex, sexuality, sexual pleasure, sexual beginning the relationship, ending it, it's infinite.
Yeah.
He also said, I'm sure he said this on a radio program with us, that we should know more about it. And women should write more about it. It shouldn't be just a male sport. He didn't like being associated with the phallocrats, the famous Mailer, Updike, Roth, as if only men experienced it. He welcomed Erica Jong and others, but saying we should hear more of their experience.
Yeah, and Erica Jong's career boost is a lot due to Updike writing that good review of Fear of Flying. You talk about the fiction, and Joan Cuddy had lupus, which I don't think is a secret, and so did a character in Rabbit is Rich that they do a wife swap with. And Joan, when reading Rabbit is Rich, was livid and called from the West Coast looking for my father's unlisted phone number, which my mother eventually gave her. And she comes up in the letters later, sort of causing a little trouble between John and Martha.
Explain the anger that he speaks about. I write in a kind of rage.
As we said earlier, I mean, I think his anger is confined to his writing in a way. He makes these situations. His characters can be angry and tell people to F off and stuff and yell at them. I mean, Rabbit is much more of a impulsive actor than the author can be. Beck is a much more proactive kind of writer and character in a way. And then he's sitting, in his little Beverly Farms mansion, typing away on the third floor. So the only time, or in a novel, I felt sorry for him in a way was towards the end of Time, where I know in real life he would go down his driveway every morning and get his newspaper. And that novel is filled with just little observations walking up from the driveway, what flowers are blooming, what grasses are doing, what little birds he saw, etc. And it just seemed, okay, this is a bright, fresh part of his morning before he goes to write it all down on paper.
John Updike was surely in on the creation of the modern world, modern attitudes, a greatly liberated, but in many ways painful place to be. Was it worth it, do you think? Was he happy to have done it? He was in on setting the new guardrails, so to speak.
I think he loved it. I think he was happiest writing. His life turned out very well for him. He had, a sticky divorce and some unpleasant affairs, a few minor health problems, psoriasis, bad teeth,
asthma.
But he did exactly what he wanted to every day that he woke up, which was write or read, and he loved it.
Yeah, and I think especially those early letters to Mary kind of explaining the drive and the satisfaction he got from writing. There's, I think in one of the letters, he mentions something to the effect of in between the ages of 16 and 20, I've already received something like 300 rejection slips from the New Yorker. But he had the kind of confidence and the will to keep going with this. I think most people would have just said, forget it.
He had the work ethic, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is Howard Moss, a poetry editor for the New Yorker. Little Violet, Ipswich, which is their first house when they moved to Ipswich. Thank you for the kind word about having received the book. It did much to ameliorate what I calculate was the 22nd consecutive rejection. Indeed, I'm about to conclude that the editors may have long since recognized that as a light verse writer, I am through. It's always the legs that go first. However, you must admire the indefatigable spunk in which I keep sending new skeets into the air. One is enclosed. Best, John.
This is very interesting and wonderfully cheerful, I think. We've come to a kind of a resolution that he lived very happily in a world that he helped create. And he was also, strikes me, he's fulfilling his own vocational goal to begin with, often quoted. He said, "My only duty was to describe reality as it had come to me, to give the mundane its beautiful due."
Mm-hmm.
It's a marvel to me that in his last thinking about writing, he was composing or imagining composing a biography of St. Paul, the best writer in the New Testament, an incredible thinker, and somebody thoroughly worthy object of John Updike's best meditation. Not to mention that St. Paul was the letter writer, the epistles.
Yes, good connections, Chris. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's according to my stepmother, it's only sort of note cards laying out the plot of the St. Paul novel that never got made. But it'd be nice to just see what he was thinking plot-wise.
Do we know what the plot was? The famous road to Damascus when he was struck down and converted?
I'm sure that's in there. I don't know. So,
The short of it is John Updike became himself, after all.
he did.
Yeah, I'm thrilled with the book and very proud to see my father getting a little recognition after all of this time. It's nice for people to understand that this was a man and his books are the product of this man, and his writing process is different than the characters that he created. So I'm hoping that when people read this book and the letters, they can make sort of that connection.
And embrace John Updike again.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure, a privilege, and great fun to hear you talk about my dad, John Updike. Miranda and Michael, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chris. This has been fun.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
Michael Updike, in his own artistic life, is a sculptor in stone. Miranda Updike is a painter and teacher. The book we've been reading from is Selected Letters of John Updike, edited by James Schiff, in a catalog of Updike's lifetime output in poetry, essays, novels, and story collections. The letters could be counted as Updike Book number 63. Our conversation here at Open Source relies on listener support. If you haven't done your part yet, now's the time. Please go to radioopensource.org/donate and pitch in to keep the world's first and longest-running podcast going strong. Leave a comment while you're at it. We're proud to be a founding member of Hub and Spoke, a Boston-based collective of independent, creator-owned podcasts. Our shows range from technology to history to politics to art. We come together around the principle that independent voices and independently funded media are more important now than ever. You can learn more at hubspokeaudio.org. And thank you